Hi, this is Gus Lefkowski for AP Gov Review, and in this segment we're going to be looking at an FRQ that was on the 2004 AP Gov exam, and this one dealt with foreign policy with respect to Congress and the President. What I would highly suggest, as I'll say in every video, is that you actually pause the screen and actually try to do it either in your head or out on paper before I discuss this particular FRQ. So I would highly suggest, just as a good means of practice, that you pause this video right now, and then after you do it, check your answers over in this particular segment. Okay, so when you look at an FRQ here, of course, we're going to count the number of parts that are involved. And if we look here, you have 2, 4, 6, and then you also have 8 because you have to explain how each of the informal powers identified in Part C contribute to the President's advantage over Congress in conducting foreign policy. Now, simply numbering number 1, you don't necessarily need to put A, B, C, or D as you're writing this is more than enough. Remember, with identifications, you can simply just write out the answer. So, for example, identify 2 formal constitutional powers of the President in making foreign policy. Well, you can simply say the President is the Commander-in-Chief and has the power to commit troops in the world. Also, the President has the power to negotiate and make treaties. And by simply doing this right here, you've already identified 2. Now, certainly you could put more than 2. Other acceptable answers would include recognizing nations. You could also say receiving ambassadors, appointing ambassadors. So these are some of the major formal. When we're talking about formal, remember that we're talking specifically about powers given to the President in the Constitution. And these all, of course, come from Article 2. So then the next part here, identify 2 formal constitutional powers of Congress in making foreign policy. So again, you have to think back to Article 1, and you could simply say Congress has the power to confirm ambassadors, specifically that being the Senate. Congress also has the power to declare war. Excuse me. You can also say that Congress has the power to pass laws as well as resolutions with respect. You have to make that caveat there, with respect to foreign policy issues. They also can regulate foreign commerce when there are trade agreements. A good example of that would be NAFTA. And then also ratifying treaties. These are all formal constitutional powers given to Congress in Article 1. All right, again, with identifications, you don't need to write long-winded paragraphs by any means. Identifications are in some regards the easiest to write. And then we're already in Part C. Identify 2 informal powers of the President that contribute to the President's advantage over Congress in conducting foreign policy. 2 informal powers of the President are executive agreements and access to the bully pulpit. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what the bully pulpit is, it's something that was coined around the presidency of Teddy Roosevelt as a means of being such an effective communicator with the public that he could use the media to persuade the public to, think of something being more important in terms of agenda setting. So that's what we talk about when you have the bully pulpit. You could also, of course, say meeting with world leaders. You can certainly say that the president is recognized as a global leader. Also, you could say the informal role specifically, is the crisis manager. Any of those certainly work. Again, when we're talking about informal, we're talking specifically about powers that are not directly in the Constitution. Okay, and then for Part D, you must show how or why the identified power gives the President advantages over Congress. So, for example, when you're looking at the power of agreements, the President does not need the authorization of Congress for executive agreements. And then with respect to the bully pulpit, you can say certainly the President has the power to persuade the public on foreign policy issues. This will pressure Congress to take action in some cases. So just right there, you've explained the two informal powers, the first one being, of course, executive agreements, and the second one being access to the bully pulpit. So simply just in this particular response, you've already done the FRQ, you've hit all 8 points. So again, keep that in mind. You could also have said, too, that you're persuading Congress, you could be negotiating, you could also talk about really the fact that, when you have a formal process, it can be very lengthy. With an informal process, it is much easier to get things done. So in this case, this would be some of the acceptable answers, and this is how you could certainly approach an FRQ and get full credit.